Thank you, Harold, and good evening, everyone. It's an honor and a privilege to be here to share with you a little bit tonight about my journey through the world of sports and into eventually the nonprofit world. As Harold mentioned, he and I have been good friends and colleagues for a number of years, in fact, decades. And any of you that know Harold, politically, he's a little bit to the right of Attila the Hun, and so we line up pretty close. And so when he asked me to come tonight, he did play the Patriot card. He said, "I know what a great American you are, Bill, and of course you do believe in free speech." I said, "Absolutely, I do, Harold." He said, "Good. I need you to give one at Biola." So. Here I am, but I am not a stranger to Biola. In fact, I was sitting here thinking about this, but my very first exposure to what goes on in the College of Business was when Dan Maltby used to run this program, and you had the speaker series based on Good to Great. And remember that when Jim Collins' terrific book, Good to Great, and you did a whole speaker series 7 or 8 years ago, and you did a series of tapes. By the way, is the sound okay? You got the sound okay? Good, all right. And my wife always tells me I'm too loud, so tell me if I need to tune it down. Anyway, just moving into this job, transitioning into this job, it was probably Harold that tipped me off to these series of lectures based on the book Good to Great. I grabbed that book, listened to all the tapes and lectures, read the book, and as I'll get into in a little bit, that's what really helped formulate how I began to change the culture at Special Olympics Southern California. So Biola means a lot to me in a number of ways. Bob and I share the awesome privilege of being mentors. In fact, my relationship with my original mentee, Phil Gross, and his wife, Ashley, he's been out of school now a couple of years, and my wife and I still have dinner with them and have the great privilege of mentoring them, not just through their professional careers, but certainly through their married life and their spiritual life. I'm also here a couple of times a year with Dr. Sherwin's graduating seniors in the business school as they make their presentations, and I'm continually impressed with the quality of education that comes out of here, training the young Christian mind. And I tell you what, that became a real contrast to me. Last Friday, I had probably one of the top 5 great honors and privileges in my career. I was asked to be a commencement speaker at the University of Southern California. I wasn't the commencement speaker. That was Christian Amanpour of CNN. But I was one of 20 for about 40,000 people on campus that day. And as Harold said, I had worked there for 3 years. And it was an awesome experience. Brought back a lot of great memories. And Steven Spielberg was there, and Rob Lowe, and a host of others, Maria Shriver. And it was just a wonderful day and a privilege for me to share. But when the Dean of Religious Studies got up to give the invocation in front of tens of thousands of people, we never once bowed our head. He did refer to the tremendous wisdom in the library that's there from people like Buddha and Confucius, and never once was the name Jesus Christ mentioned. Never once did we bow our heads. And that obviously touched a chord with me, and I thought, wow, is this really where we're at as a nation? Then we proceeded to go to the satellite ceremony. I got to talk to 100 graduates and 500 of their family, and of course my brief 15-minute message was all based upon biblical principles. I didn't quote any scripture, but it was all biblical principles, and I was amazed at the response from students, faculty, and parents. Oh my gosh, that's exactly what we needed to hear, straight from the Word of God. And nobody does it better than Biola. What a great institution. In fact, not only are you a great academic institution, I have to tell you, you've become a little bit of a jock factory. And I'll tell you why. We have a young lady on our staff who's a Westmont alum, and she told me today, she said, my favorite t-shirt when I was at Westmont was beat Biola, beat Biola. So you got to know that you guys are marked out there. As Harold said, my background, really my whole life, not just my career, is in sports. I have a tremendous passion and love for sports. In fact, I've been fortunate now for most of 4 decades to be involved in the professional, the collegiate, and the amateur levels of sports. And as you know, sports in our society is a tremendous vehicle. It teaches, it sells, it entertains, it motivates. It's also a microcosm of society, both good and bad. All you need to do is follow the news every day to find that out. I've also seen sports in about the last decade come together with business and entertainment and converge and take everything to a whole new level. A whole new level. And I helped found the graduate program in sport management at Long Beach State at my alma mater, and I tell the students when I speak at graduation twice a year, I say the good news is there's never been more opportunities. The bad news is never has there been more opportunity to compromise your integrity. And at the end of the day, especially for those of you that are just starting your career, your integrity and your reputation are what go with you always. And in this day and age, you can run, but you can't hide, because with technology as advanced as it is, things travel virally, and we all know about that. But my love for sports really began when I was a youngster. My family moved around a lot when I was young. Later they told me it was when the rent was due. I'm not sure if that was true or not. But every time we moved into a new neighborhood or a new community, I wasn't a very good athlete. But if I got a shirt and a hat and I got on a team, I belonged. And that was my way of adjusting to young life. And that's what really helps give me a bond with our Special Olympics athletes, because I see how much sports gives them someplace and something to belong to. Right, Roger? Roger's a volunteer for us up in the San Gabriel Valley. It's a tremendous, tremendous vehicle for that. And so I would do something when I was 8, 9, 10 years old that I still do now occasionally. I fall asleep listening to the radio, listening to Vin Scully. I've been doing that for 50 years. What a blessing. Count that as a blessing, ladies and gentlemen, because listening to him weave words, and then getting up in the morning and getting my cornflakes and picking up the newspaper and reading the game story. Little did I know, but I was beginning to learn the art of communication, the spoken word, the written word, and that has everything to do with sports. And in fact, that whole thing about belonging to a team, I used a phrase with our staff a few years ago, right in the middle of the Great Recession. Remember back in 2008 when the bottom was falling out of everything. And we were having to cut jobs and cut program, and it wasn't pretty. It was very difficult. There was a lot of angst among the staff, and I called everybody together, and I said, I'm going to tell you something that I believed in, I practiced my whole life. I said, I don't want to lose one more of you. I don't want to lose another single soul in this room. I'm going to make it through this thing, and I want you to make it with me, but I'm going to tell you something that I really believe in. You got to find a way to play your way onto the team. I played my way onto the team my whole life. I wasn't very good, but I found a way to make that team. I was a backup quarterback. Anybody knows anything about football, when you're the backup quarterback, you run the other team's plays, you get the stuffing beat out of you 4 days a week, and you hold the clipboard on Friday night. Not a lot of fun, but I was on the team. I was on the team. I remember my high school baseball coach, very successful, very principled man, High Laval. I played 2 years of junior varsity baseball in high school, really wanted to make that varsity team as a senior, and he called me in and he said, Bill, he said, I got one spot left, and I know you're a left fielder, and I'm going to start a sophomore in left field, which made me feel bad for a little bit, but that sophomore hit .545 as a senior. He was a good player, so I got beat out by a good player. But Coach said to me, he said, Bill, if you don't take the last spot on the team, I'm going to have a difficult decision between a couple of other guys that happen to be your friends, and the only thing you're going to do, you're going to coach third, and maybe you're going to pinch hit a little bit. And so I want to know if you want the spot. And I said, why wouldn't I want the spot? And he said, because it's your senior year, and I thought you might want to have fun. I said, where am I going to have more fun than coaching third? I didn't even know where he was coming from. Hit .333 that year, 2 for 6. One was a bunt single. Only time, including Little League, I hit over 200. So it was a great year. But I played my way onto that team. And before Coach Laval died, He moved from Dominguez High School, where he won a CIF championship, up to Canyon High School in Anaheim. When he retired, they named the field for him, and he invited back a lot of his players that he put into Division I major college baseball, into the major leagues, into professional baseball. A lot of really good players in the audience that day. He had 3 guys on the field with him. 3 guys down there for the ceremony. He had Jerry Royce, who was a Major League All-Star, pitched no-hitter. He had Don Sneddon, who is the winningest coach in junior college baseball history in Southern California. And he had the kid that went 2 for 6 and coached third. And I'm sure there were a lot of guys in the audience going, what the world did that guy do? How'd that guy get down? Well, I played my way onto that team. I played my way onto that team. And so I think that's very important in business, in organizations, and as I'm going to get into a little bit later, that's how we run our organization as a sports organization. And sports is very, very competitive, and I like that. Harold mentioned that I began my career very early with 12 years with the Los Angeles Dodgers when they were the Dodgers, hand over the heart. I've put my ring back on now that they have good ownership again, because we are all hoping for good things. Thank you. And not only were we recognized as the premier sports organization in all of sports, the premier sports organization. We were one of the top 100 companies in America. One of the top 100 companies in America. And I'll go into that a little bit later on something when I want to show an example with you. But that was a tremendous 12-year doctoral degree for me in how to do business right. We drew 3 million fans for 6 seasons, 6 separate seasons before anybody else in all of baseball could ever get. So we set a new gold standard. We took the 1980 baseball all-star game, which in those days, you just played the game. You took 3 days off, you played the game. Now, as you see, there's a whole week's worth of activities, right, leading up to that all-star game. Guess who started that? The Dodgers did. The Dodgers did. Also, Mr. O'Malley was very, very involved in wanting to see baseball grow internationally. And so he was a big investor overseas, and he raised his hand when the '84 Olympics came here. And even though they couldn't be a gold medal sport, Mr. O'Malley said, can we have a demonstration baseball tournament here? So in 1984, Olympic baseball came to Dodger Stadium, 8 countries, 8 doubleheaders, 8 days, no, 2 doubleheaders, I'm sorry, forgive me. 8 teams, 8 days, a doubleheader each day. Yeah, 16 games total. We averaged 45,000 fans in Dodger Stadium, and baseball became an Olympic gold medal sport shortly thereafter, thanks to Mr. O'Malley's vision and his passion. But for some strange reason, I really wanted to be a college athletic director. I wanted to get back to a college campus, and so I had the opportunity to move over to the University of Southern California. It was a big, huge career decision for me, and one that turned out to be a great one. Because if I was going to be an athletic director and work on a college campus, I really needed to learn fundraising, and nobody knows how to fundraise better than the University of Southern California. In fact, I reminded the graduates of that because, see, there's a saying that says, if you go to UCLA, you're a Bruin for 4 years. But if you go to USC, you're a Trojan for life. And I know why. It's because they never lose your address. And as soon as you graduate, they will be at you early and often to donate back to the dear old alma mater. They do it great, and that was a great lesson for me and a great opportunity to learn some tremendous lessons and learn how things operate on a college campus. But as our good and gracious Lord and Savior always does, when we enjoy great prosperity, He also happens to change the seasons in our life to bring a little bit of adversity and testing into our lives and suffering. And mine came when I took my first athletic director job at Cal State Fullerton 3 years later. And I can truly say that they were the 3 longest, most miserable years of my entire professional career as I look back on it. But some of the lessons that were learned were just tremendous. And in fact, they got so bad that we were going through lawsuits. In fact, Harold was a key witness that our lawyers in their ineptness couldn't even get Harold on the stand. I remember that. And so we were really out-lawyered. We got killed in a couple of big lawsuits, and I was going to be the sacrificial lamb. And I knew if I didn't resign, I was going to get fired. And so I took the initiative, and for you people just starting your career, don't ever say that. Don't try this at home. Isn't that what they say in the commercials? I remember sitting down with my president, things had really gone south, and we'd really reached that point. And finally I said to him, I said, you know, Mr. President, guys like me just shouldn't be working for guys like you. Not a good thing to say. Don't write that down. Don't ever use that line. Because then it was obviously time for me to go. But being a journalism major, I heard something here. Harold had me come and fill in for him to hear Ken Blanchard on campus about a month ago. And Ken talked about, you know, there's so much emphasis nowadays on our strengths. Go to your strengths. Play your strengths. Whatever it is, it has to do with your strengths. You know what, and I heard a sermon a couple of weeks ago at our church where our pastor said, you know what, that one big problem, that one big fear that you have in your life, that just might be the thing that's standing between you and what God wants you to be. So it's okay to really play up your strengths and emphasize your strengths, but it's also really good to lean into your weaknesses. And my time at Fullerton really taught me to do that. And then Ken Blanchard said last month that really resonated with me. He said, you know, people will admire your accomplishments. They'll admire your accomplishments, but they will really love the fact that you are vulnerable and transparent because you show your human side. So when it was time for me to resign at Cal State Fullerton, I got to write my own resignation speech, and I crafted a phrase that I thought, you know, for a state college kid, pretty clever. I said, I've decided to step aside to allow the healing process to escalate in the athletic program. I've decided to step aside in order to escalate the healing process in the athletic program. In other words, I've been the lightning rod, the center of attention. I'm going to step out of way to escalate the healing process. About a month later, I'd moved over to Long Beach State. My wife and I were up getting ready for work, and we're listening to news radio, and the sports reporter comes on at 6:15, and he said, Jim Weaver, the athletic director at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, announced his resignation yesterday, saying he was stepping aside to escalate the healing process. And my wife said, wasn't that your line? I said, yeah, it was, sweetheart. I said, I sent that speech to every athletic director in the league. I said, keep this in the drawer. You're going to need it. And sure enough, they did. So that was my little way of showing some transparency and some vulnerability and all that. But the other great lesson that I learned at Cal State Fullerton, I had to bring this with me because I'm a journalism major and this is so fun to share. But what I have learned in becoming a leader is that you want to surround yourself with people that you trust, and you want to surround yourself with people who will tell you the truth no matter what. So I make my first key hire about a year in at Cal State Fullerton. I have to fire my basketball coach, and I have to make a real key hire. And I think I make a great hire. I hire a guy who was John Wooden's last recruit at UCLA, guy who was drafted along with Magic to the Lakers same year, played on that world championship team, and he was the lead assistant to Jim Herrick at UCLA. His name was Brad Holland. Classy, quality, Christian guy, right? Never been a head coach, but he was the guy I needed to move us forward. So in those days in Orange County, the Times and the Register were very competitive with each other, and they worked hard to play off one another. So we have, bless you, so we have the press conference one day at the hotel next to the school, plays really, really well. And of course, 5 a.m., I'm laying in bed next morning just waiting to hear that paper hit the driveway. I want to hear how this, I want to check out how this story is played. So, you know, sure enough, I race down, I pick up both papers, and here's the Los Angeles Times. Now, journalism major, this is called Above the Fold. This is really good, okay? The story's Above the Fold. Lead story, Titans take a chance on Holland, okay? So we got the lead story. Not only do we have the lead story, we got the columnist, Mike Penner. He's going to write a column about this. So I'm standing there while my wife's getting ready to work for work, and I'm just very proud showing this off and reading it to her. And I'm reading Mike Penner's column, and the more I'm reading it, the more I'm liking it, because when I get to the jump, he starts really hitting home. He says, Holland's got the ball, and at no small risk to Shumard. 8 months on the job, and Shumard makes what could be the make or break decision of his career at Fullerton or beyond. Then there's a quote from me. My wife mentioned that to me, Shumard said. She said, sweetheart, we're eating on this decision. She always lets me know where it stands. Shumard needs his new basketball coach to succeed, only to the point that his entire athletic department probably depends on it. Now this is the part I really like. Then again, the degree of the gamble rests in the eye of the beholder. And when Shumard looked at Holland and then looked in the mirror, he essentially saw the same image. Young up-and-comer, firm believer in public relations, dedicated family man and devout Christian, tailor-made and tailor-suited to Orange County. In essence, Shumard hired himself. I'm going, boy, this guy nailed the story, didn't he? And Kim says, whoa, wait a minute. What? She goes, show me the picture again. She looks at Brad, looks at me, looks at Brad, looks back at me. She said, sweetheart, on your best day, you ain't that good looking. So you need people that are going to tell you the truth, no matter how much it might hurt. So some great leadership lessons in that first athletic director job. From there, I was fortunate. I got to move over to my alma mater for 10 years, Long Beach State. I really felt that that was going to be a career culmination move for me. We tripled the graduation rate of our student athletes. 2 of the 12 head coaches that I hired on my staff, Alan Knipe and Ricardo Azevedo, their next job after they worked for me was to coach the U.S. Olympic team in their particular sport. I felt pretty good about that. 2 of the 12 coaches I hired were next selected to be the head coach of the United States Olympic team. We built and named the Pyramid. We built other facilities. We had some great teams and some wonderful student athletes, some like Misty May and Jared Weaver and Evan Longoria that went on to do very, very well professionally. Others that just went on to start families and have good careers and become good citizens. I had a great mentor in my president, Bob Maxon, and I like to say that we ran our program with tremendous integrity. In this day and age, there is so much disparity in college athletics, mostly because it's a broken system and money has become too prevalent, that there are a myriad of issues and problems that you're going to have as an athletic director and a college president before your team's ever set foot on the field of play or on the court to compete. So very difficult situation, but a great, great job and a great sort of career culmination for me. So how did I end up at Special Olympics Southern California? How did that happen? Well, our premier event for Special Olympics Southern California is Summer Games. And we have athletic events all year round at every level, from local community all the way up to our program championships. Our big program championship is Summer Games. And for 25 years, that weekend in June took place on the UCLA campus. And I got a call one day and they said, how would you like to have the Special Olympics Summer Games moved to Long Beach State and the city of Long Beach? And I said, well, that's a big decision. Let me talk with my president and our mayor. And of course, the answer was positive. My gosh, why wouldn't we want Special Olympics here? So lo and behold, the organization made the decision and they left UCLA after 25 years and came to our university. And since they were using the facilities that I oversaw as athletic director, they asked me to rejoin, or not to rejoin, but to join the board of directors of Special Olympics Southern California, which was a great opportunity for me because, among other things, it reconnected me with a guy by the name of Patrick McClanahan, who I had connected with earlier in my career at USC. Strong Christian man, a real sports guy, a media guy. In fact, his latest job before now was he was the general manager and president of Channel 2, Channel 9, only place in America where 2 television stations operate under one roof. Big job. Patrick was the chairman of Special Olympics Southern California, the volunteer chairman of the board, and he said, Bill, you need to join this board. We would love to have you on the board. So I went on the board for 5 years and enjoyed it, just like if any of you serve on boards. You know, there's only so much you want to know. You really don't want to get down. That's why they hire staff, is to deal with a lot of details, and you play your role as a board member and just, you know, you do your fiduciary responsibility of making sure that the organization is running right. Well, they went through 3 CEOs in 5 years. It became a revolving door. And one day Patrick McClanahan called me and he said, I know you'd never leave the university as long as your president was there. But he said, I know your president's going to retire. He's announced his retirement. It's time for you to come and run this organization. And I said, what in the world do I know about running a nonprofit organization? That's just not even close. He said, Bill, we might be a nonprofit organization, but he said, we're a sports organization, and you know how to run a sports organization. And we are in dire need of leadership and excellence. He said, I just want you to come in and do three things. He said, I want you to be the face and voice of the movement here in Southern California. I want you to bring your network of contacts and expose them and get them involved in our movement. And I want you to build and nurture and coach a talented staff and a talented board. And so the more I thought about it and prayed about it and sought counsel from others, including Harold, I decided to make the move. And for those of you that don't know a lot about Special Olympics, and I'm going to have Christina show a clip in just a minute, so come on up, Christina, and I'll tell you when it's time to push the button. Special Olympics is the world's largest sports organization. It was started about 44 years ago by the late Eunice Kennedy Shriver, Sergeant Shriver's wife, sister of the Kennedys. They had a sister, Rose, who had intellectual disabilities, okay? And Eunice was, I have heard the word used by Maria, she would be enraged at the way her sister was treated as someone with intellectual disabilities. So she began to train her sister and her sister's friends in their backyard, in sports events. And lo and behold, that little small activity in the backyard there in Hyannisport turned into a worldwide sports movement in 180 countries, serving almost 4 million people with intellectual disabilities. As I considered whether I was going to make this move, it was interesting some of the feedback I got from people that I really trusted. There's a lot of misconceptions about Special Olympics. Some people get it confused with the Paralympics, which involves people with physical handicaps. Some people, oh yeah, that's that big track meet that they do once a year for the kids, well, actually, Special Olympics Southern California, we compete in 12 sports in 2 seasons, 6 and 6. The goal is to get every one of our 12,000 athletes involved in at least one sport, hopefully maybe 2 in each season, so that they're training and competing year-round. Because you see, what it does for them is it provides them better physical health, better self-confidence, more self-esteem. You learn how to win, you learn how to lose, you learn how to play on a team, you learn to communicate. Our athletes are 5 times more likely to hold a job than the typical person with intellectual disabilities, all through the simple power of sport. The other thing that was pretty amazing, because people, oh, what you do for the kids, isn't that wonderful? The average age of our athletes when I came in was 37 years old. We were dying on the vine, and the needle was stuck at about 7,500 athletes. And so we knew we had to change the model, but before we changed the model, we had to begin to change the culture. I'm proud to say now, thanks to our school games program, the average age of our athlete has now dropped to 22. The good news is that once we get you in the program, we're pretty much going to have you for life. Because if you've, right, Roger, if you've ever been to one of our events, right, Ben, you know that these athletes, that's sort of their center of their social universe, their competitive universe. It is just tremendous what they do. So how did we go about changing the culture of the organization? Well, from day one, I just decided the only thing I knew how to do was run a sports organization, so we were going to run like a sports organization. So the first day I met my staff, and I walked in and they introduced me, and I looked out at them just like I'm looking at you guys right now, and I said, there's 52 chapters, there's 52 programs in the United States, 52 Special Olympics programs, including Southern California. We will be the best. We will be the premier program in the United States of America, and for the best in the United States of America, we're probably going to be the best in the world. And because we're Southern California, why would we not want to be the best? And I know several people who are still on the staff have come back to me and said, Bill, we never knew why that was so important. They do now. They do now. Because just like anything in sports, if you're competitive and you want to be the best and you want to excel, excellence is going to come from that. So a lot of that had to do with, and I remember Harold telling me at one point, Harold had gone to a seminar. Harold, you probably remember this, and the person said that you're going to spend, you as a leader are going to spend, what was it, 30 or 25 or 30% of your time with disgruntled employees, with employees that didn't belong there. And Harold thought, that's way too high. That's not true at all. And you went back and you checked your day planner and you found it was about 40%, didn't you? I remember that. And so in Jim Collins' book, he talks about what? He talks about first who, then what, and getting the right people on the bus, getting the right people on the bus and getting them in the right seats. I'm a real simple guy, and those concepts really make sense to me. And so there was a lot of elimination of people, mostly self-elimination, people that decided that the culture was going to be different than what they thought was going to be in a nonprofit organization, and so they decided to self-eliminate. And I have to laugh. I was thinking of this morning. I don't do it all the time, but I try to read the chapter in Proverbs, that matches up to the day of the month, right? Everybody with me on that? And it's a good, quick devotional. And so I had ordered a salary survey. I wanted to know how our employees were paid in comparison to other nonprofits in Southern California and in other Special Olympics organizations in the movement. I want to know how that looked. So my CFO came back to me and she said, here's the report, you're not going to like it. She said 50% of our people are underpaid. I said, what's this going to cost us if we make the adjustments? She said it's going to cost us $150,000 a year. And I thought, holy cow, we're already upside down in this year's budget. I'm not going to pay that. We can't do that. As my wife will tell you, that's my typical reaction to money every time. We can't do that. We can't afford that. Well, guess what? The next day must have been the 3rd of the month, because as I'm reading Proverbs chapter 3, I come to chapter 3, verse 27. Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due when it is in the power of your hand to do so. So I called my CFO in the next morning and I read her Proverbs chapter 3, verse 27, and I said, do it. We'll find the money. Go do it. And so she's not with me anymore. She resigned 2 years ago. But every time we hit a financial bump after that, she would come in and say, are you doing your reading? Are you doing your reading? What is God telling you to do? So pretty good message there for all of us. We had to get everybody paid correctly before we could begin. One thing that we've done in our organization in trying to be innovators in the movement is one thing I noticed why we weren't moving the needle on growing our athletes. We were trying to be all things to all people. And as you know, any good business, you can't do that. What does Jim Collins teach in Good to Great? Find the one thing that you do better than anybody else in the world, do it. And everything else becomes negotiable. Well, we were competing in 23 sports in 3 different seasons. Oh my gosh. We had horseback riding, we had sailing, we had 6 sports in the snow, and it was a crapshoot every year whether or not we were going to get snow in Big Bear. So we had to make some very, very difficult decisions. We had to pare the program back, and we had to go to 12 sports in 2 seasons in sports that where we knew we could get a lot of facility use at a reasonable price, and we could grow our athlete base, and we could partner with the schools. Because if we partnered with the schools, we knew we could get a good volunteer partnership and start getting athletes at an early age. So right away, we became a movement leader in doing this, because we went from being all things to all people to being focused and purposeful and strategic. We also had to get down to playing by the rules. We are a sports organization. As you know, in sports, any legitimate sports organization plays by the rules. We had to make some very, very difficult decisions. We have a region, San Diego, which happens to be the 8th largest city in America. We had some huge issues in San Diego. We had to shut San Diego down. And we had to make some very difficult decisions, got killed in the media, got beaten up, got called every name in the book, but there were some things that needed to happen. In fact, all 3 CEOs that preceded me said, oh, you finally fired those guys. Nice going. I should have done that. I said, then why didn't you? Why did we have to do it? But we had to make those tough decisions and ride through the tough times. Fortunately, our board had a lot of faith in us and confidence in what we were doing and stuck with us and backed us the whole way. The other thing we began to find out is that our program had run a certain way for so long that the parents of our athletes were not necessarily our biggest supporters. Because if we were going to change and really go by the rules, that might not have been too good for their Susie or their Johnny. And so they didn't, what do you have to, that's not going to be good for Johnny or Susie. And we said, yeah, but we have to reach thousands more Johnnies and Susies. We have to change thousands of more lives. And so making those tough decisions, learning to empower our volunteers, because let's face it, in this day and age, we're only going to be able to hire so much staff, so we have to go out and we have to recruit, and a couple of you are in the audience tonight. We have some very capable and smart volunteers that we want to empower to help run our programs. The other thing that of course is extremely important in a nonprofit, just as it is in a for-profit organization, and it's what my staff knows I affectionately call feeding the bulldog. We have to raise money. We have to raise money, because the more money we raise, the more lives we change. So we look at everything extremely closely in terms of our return on investment. What we're doing, just because it might look nice, if we don't get a return on investment, we're not going to do it for very much longer. Even during the times of great layoffs that I talked about back in 2008, we laid off about 15 positions, but at the same time, I told my board, we have to create 2 new positions. We have to get an individual major gifts officer, because we don't have one, and we're not doing well. The entire movement isn't doing well in individual giving, and if you look at the statistics, any good nonprofit organization makes 50% of its annual income on individual gifts. Ours was like 3%. I said, I need to have an individual gifts officer. I need to hire a pro in that spot. The other thing I need is a web manager. I need a techie. I need a 20-something. I need someone who's going to drive everything that we do to the website, because some of us older folks, us baby boomers, I like to read my newspaper. I like to open my snail mail. Guess what? The next generation isn't doing that. It's all online. So even though we had massive layoffs, I said I need 2 new positions. They are revenue generating positions, and we've got to have them yesterday. And so we took those courageous steps to move forward there, because the bottom line is, as I tell my staff, we may have hired you to a certain job description, but believe me when I tell you that first and foremost, you are a revenue generator. We are all revenue generators. That is our job. And so we spend a lot of time teaching our staff how to fish, teaching them how to fish. Let me talk a little bit about how we established a new culture and some of the things that we used to apply to that. I talked about Jim Collins and good to great, and first who and then what, getting the right people on the bus, getting the right people in place before you decide what you're going to do. And then you want to center in on that one thing you do better than anybody else in the whole world. And for us, that one thing is training and competing people with intellectual disabilities in sports. Nobody in the world does it better than us, does it in Special Olympics. That's what we're in business for. So we had to come up with a BHAG, what Jim Collins calls a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And mine, walking in the door, was we are going to be the premier sports organization in our movement here in Southern California. That was our BHAG, and it's nice to see after 7 years how that's beginning to kick in. One thing I share with my staff, and that I got from from Peter Drucker. Drucker uses an illustration of an intersection. And that intersection, one street is Passion.
Wrong color.
Wrong color, yeah. I'm sorry if it doesn't show up. But one line is passion and one line is competence. And if you apply passion and competence at that intersection, you're going to get significance. And that's the sweet spot in your life and your career where you want to be. Statistics will show that people work for 3 reasons. The 3 main reasons people work, third most, is what we're compensated. Yeah, that's important. It's only the 3rd most important thing. Second most important thing, do we respect and admire the person that we work for? And so you young people, pick mentors early and often. Pick people that you admire and respect and emulate them. First most important reason, why do we work? We want to be part of something bigger than us. We want to have significance. We want our lives and our careers to matter. Got a couple of examples why you need both passion and competence. First, with passion, when I worked at USC, believe it or not, we were in the middle of a 10-game losing streak to Notre Dame. You only play football once a year. That's 10 years worth of losses to Notre Dame. Not pretty, not fun, not acceptable. Doesn't help fundraising, I'll tell you that. So during those 3 years, we play back at South Bend, and we decided, our head football coach, Larry Smith, decided just to fire the troops up a little more, we would bring in the late, great Hall of Fame coach, John McKay, to give the pregame speech. And he came in, and it was an unbelievable pregame speech. Saved only for a worthy opponent like Notre Dame. And the team was fired up, and they charged out into the field in Notre Dame Stadium. And I happened to be a few steps behind Coach McKay as he was walking out to the field with Craig Fertig, his former quarterback and one of our administrators. And I listened to the conversation. And Coach McKay said, "So Craig, how'd I do?" And Fertig said, "You know, Coach, that might have been the best pregame speech I've ever heard you give. I have never, Coach, I have never seen a team more passionate, more emotional." Coach McKay, in his wry wit, he said, "Craig, all that's well and good, but you see, my wife, Corky, she's passionate and she's emotional. Doesn't change the fact that she's still an awfully poor tackler." So, passion and emotion will take you only so far. Let's talk for a minute about competence. Do you remember when I said the Dodgers were one of the top 100 companies in all of America? My boss and one of my 3 great mentors in my life, Fred Clare, Forbes, Newsweek, the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, they all came to Dodger Stadium. How does a sports organization make the top 100 businesses? I mean, we don't get it. And Fred would give them the same speech every time. He'd say, "Secret list, secret formula. You ready to write? Because here it is. Come to work early. Stay late. Answer," this was before email, "answer every piece of mail within 24 hours. Answer every telephone call within the hour. Treat everyone in the organization, from the janitor to the owner, with the dignity and respect that they deserve. When you make a mistake, own up to it, privately or publicly. The customer, the fan, the donor is always right and is always first." And after a while, the reporter would say, "Come on, it's got to be more complicated than that. There's got to be more to it than that." Fred said it really isn't. It's competence. It's dedication. It's consistency in the little things over and over and over, day in, day out. So one thing that our organization really concentrates on is the combination of passion and competency, because we really believe that we're doing something significant in the lives of people with intellectual disabilities, and of course their families and all the people that come in contact with them. Another great piece of wisdom I picked up from the great American philosopher and theologian, Woody Allen. Woody Allen said, 75% of success is what? Showing up. 75% of success is showing up. I can show up. So when I became the 4th CEO in 6 years, and I had to manage a staff of paid volunteer people, they were very nice. But a lot of them said, you know what? Just leave me alone, do what you're going to do, but don't include me because you're the flavor of the month and you're going to be gone. So I told my key people, we're going to show up. We're going to show up with the same message, and in year 2, they'll believe us a little more. And in year 3, they'll believe us a little more than that. In year 4, they're going to start to get the message. And guess what? We're in year 7. So that has really paid off by showing up, being consistent, being visible. I believe that organizations, the strength of organizations are built through continuity, stability, longevity. That is what builds an organization that is going to endure. I know another thing that has become very, very important has been the dignity and respect that we show each other in the organization. Our latest hire came to us from Special Olympics Wisconsin. She was one of the premier communications directors in the country. And she had spent 10 years at Special Olympics Wisconsin, another very strong program. 6 years as communications director for Team USA, our international Olympic team. Very highly respected in our movement. And she told me a few weeks ago, she said, Bill, she said, we were pretty good to each other in Wisconsin, but she said, I have never seen an organization with the mutual respect that you have for each other. That blesses my heart. That blesses my heart. That alone right there is worth the price of admission for me if we can treat each other with the dignity and respect that we deserve. And I think the one thing that would show more than ever that we are now being looked at as a premier organization in this movement, as Harold said, in 2015, the largest sporting event in the world, the Special Olympics World Summer Games, has been awarded to Los Angeles. There is, yeah, absolutely. There is now, I talked about our former chairman of the board, Patrick McClanahan. Patrick has resigned to become the CEO of the Games Organizing Committee. All that group has to do in the next 3.5 years is raise $80 million to make sure that 7,000 athletes from around the world come to Los Angeles and compete in 22 sports. Great story to tell the world. Nobody's going to do it better than we do here, and we've earned that because we have become the premier program, we think, with all due respect, in our movement. We've earned the chance, we've earned the opportunity to do this. I want to save a little time for questions, but I do want to close with, I want to read a couple of things. Again, if you don't know it by now, I'm a sports guy. I love sports. I follow sports closely. And I don't like where a lot of sports are going. And so I'm going to read this clip about the Lakers and Kobe Bryant that was written a couple of years ago that kind of gives you the flavor of what pro sports is all about. And it's T.J. Simer's column. And he's talking about another guy who's writing about Kobe. And he says, Tim Keown, writing brilliantly this week for ESPN.com after the dismissive face that Kobe makes after nearly every basket, asks the question that I continually ask. How can a guy with that much talent play with that little joy? It's sad maybe, but Kobe will never be appreciated in a manner commensurate with his ability, writes Keown. He's in the process of turning himself into an anti-hero. He has to accentuate everything with the facial expressions and the dismissiveness. It's not enough for him to beat someone. He feels compelled to belittle that person in the process. Too often the cameras catch him swearing after scoring a basket. Why someone has to cuss after being successful is baffling. In the playoffs, writes Keown, his performances generally follow one of two themes. Number one, he takes over the game and he taunts everybody in sight, demanding that all acknowledge his greatness. Or two, he steps back and intentionally doesn't take over a game, in which case his attitude seems to be, see what they look like without me? Either way, it's a tough act to embrace. Now, don't get me wrong. Kobe's a great player and done great things for Los Angeles and for the game. But is that really what sports is all about? Now, contrast it with some things that have been written by excellent sports writers about Special Olympics Summer Games. Frank Burleson, he's in the College Basketball Hall of Fame. Great writer. I hope that a lot of you had the opportunity to visit Long Beach State Campus last weekend for the 41st Southern California Special Olympics Summer Games. Any cynicism you might have been feeling from a sports perspective that USC gets nailed by the NCAA and conference realignment stories that come immediately to mind would have been washed away at least for a few days. But those administrators, sponsors, and volunteers who make the Special Olympics the entity it is are about a lot more than just providing an opportunity for a lot of special needs boys, girls, men and women to demonstrate their swimming, running, and basketball skill at a nice venue. More importantly, they are about providing an environment in which those athletes whose effort and enthusiasm trample any notion of handicap and their families can let the most cynical of us, at least for a little while, bask in the glow of the love and the commitment that they feel toward one another. And just because I'm an old school sports guy, I'm going to finish with my favorite sports clip, okay? And this is a clip from a book written by a guy named Alex Hawkins, who played for the Baltimore Colts back when Johnny Unitas, the greatest quarterback who ever played, was their quarterback. And this is an excerpt, and it's from a piece in Sports Illustrated, and the title is, "How Tough Was He?" Tough as nails, as Alex Hawkins, a teammate, vividly shows in this excerpt from his story, My Story, by Alex Hawkins. The Bears were in front 20-17, and the Colts had the ball inside the 40-yard line with just seconds remaining in the game. On third down, Unitas called a deep pattern to Lenny Moore. He told me to stay in and block. The Bears were blitzing, and Bill George managed to get a hold of one of John's legs. George held him long enough for Doug Atkins to get free and finish him off. John was slow getting up. We knew he was hurt. The trainers and doctors were running out onto the field as Doug stood towering over John's limp body. Doug just stared down at him for a second, and then he spoke. "Well, kid, that's about it for you today." John propped himself up on one hand, and he replied, "Not just yet, it ain't." When I saw John's face, I almost threw up. His nose was slashed and mangled, and his face was covered with blood. It was as if he had been hit with an axe. Have you ever noticed how deathly quiet things get when a great player goes down? A hush settled over Wrigley Field as they took John to the sideline. After packing his nose full of cotton, he trotted back on the field. When he reached the huddle, his nose had already swollen to twice its normal size, and both eyes were almost swollen shut. On fourth down, with no timeouts and only 19 seconds left on the clock, John called the identical deep pattern to Moore. Lenny beat his defender as Unitas uncorked a perfect 39-yard scoring strike to win it, 24-20. It was the most dramatic finish and the darndest spectacle I had ever seen. Things like this don't just happen, they're caused. The man who caused this one, John Unitas, just walked off the field as if it were an everyday occurrence. No high fives, no dancing or celebrating, no fingers pointing upward designated "we're number one." Here was the greatest quarterback who ever played the game, walking casually off the field, having just completed another day at work. This was what he was paid to do. How often do we see that kind of dignity anywhere? Great stuff, great stuff. So let me open it up for any questions or comments that you might have. Yes, sir.
Which is more difficult to deal with, the city of LA or the international team?
Oh my gosh. Well, we fall under the mothership of Special Olympics International. Special Olympics Southern California is its own separate 501c3. So I report to my own board, but we must play by the rules of the mothership. Excuse me. And the great thing about working in conjunction with Patrick McClanahan, who is, among other things, an extremely devout Christian. And to hear Pat, I always like to tell everybody I talk to when I introduce Pat, I said, here's a man who's providentially called to do this job. He will tell you how God has tapped him on the shoulder many times to say, Pat, I need you to do this. Special Olympics International does not have the best reputation in terms of dealing with them. We had warned Patrick about that. And Pat kept telling me, I know, Bill, I know, but we're going to do this. And so finally I told Pat one day, I said, Pat, there's going to be 3 seats at the table, and you and I are in 2 of them, and the mothership's in the third seat, and I have incredible trust in 2 of us. And it's great to see how far he has moved Special Olympics International toward to more vulnerability, to more transparency, to more trustworthiness. It's not going to be without, there's $80 million at stake here. There's a lot of money that has to be raised with an organization that hasn't necessarily had a great reputation for trustworthiness. I trust Pat implicitly. And so that's a big challenge. And going into it, we knew that was going to be a huge challenge. At the end of the day, it didn't really matter what I thought, because Patrick felt that he was providentially called. In fact, he shares one story. We had to go to Athens, Greece last summer for Special Olympics World Games, to begin to do our homework to see what it was going to be as the next recipient of World Summer Games. And Pat was deathly sick a week before he had to go. So he went to see his physician. He says, you got to get me better. I got to go to Athens, got to do this. So doctor says, okay, I'll be back in a minute. So the doctor and the nurse leave, and the nurse comes back in the room, and she shuts the door, and she said, can I talk to you for a moment? Pat said, this can't be good. I said, yeah, what is it? She's Filipino. And she said, I know where you're going, and I know what that means. And Pat goes, yeah, World Games, it's wonderful, 180 countries. She said, I have a 7-year-old son with autism, and the only people, I choked up when I think about this, the only people that know it are my husband and my mother. Because, and then she broke down, and Pat said, because in your culture, it's a shame, isn't it? You're shamed in your culture. And so she says, so you have to do this. So Patrick said, you're right, I have to do this. Great stuff, great stuff. Yes?
First of all, thank you.
Oh, my privilege.
In your long career that you've had, what would you say was your biggest mistake? And how did you overcome that, I guess?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. Well, Fullerton, taking the first athletic director job that I had a chance to, and totally unqualified for the job. I had a lot of heart-to-hearts with God over 3 years. I would be on the freeway and just roll up my windows and say, why did you put me here? What, I know I'm a dirty, rotten, lousy sinner, and I appreciate you dying for my sins, but I got this great stellar career, and it's going down the tubes right now. I haven't screwed anything up yet. And so that was, but now that I look back on it and we talk about leaning into your weaknesses, oh, huge, huge. And the great thing is that there are people that are still on that campus that were friends and colleagues that were Christians that knew exactly what God was doing.
So did you see, when looking back on your Fullerton experience, did you see that was actually pivotal to your career, that experience was actually a good thing?
Oh, huge, yeah, because again, my whole life I wanted to be an athletic director. I got a chance to be one, and I thought I failed miserably. And so when I moved to Long Beach State, and I worked for a year in athletics, and we got the pyramid opened, and then the president moved me upstairs to work in fundraising for the university, right? And that was a pretty good gig for me. That was the first time I wasn't in something sports related. I was there for about 6 months, really enjoying it, and our athletic director at Long Beach State decided to leave. And he called me and he says, I'm resigning to go to Temple, and the coaches want you to be the athletic director, the interim athletic director, and the old man wants you too, and you need to go and see the old man about it. I said, Dave, I don't want to do that. I did not do that well. Yeah, I got my tail whooped. And he goes, Bill, we all know better than that. The coaches trust you. The president trusts you. You need to tell the president that you'll stand in the gap. So and Harold knows this, I worked for a great man. He was the guy that had to run Jerry Tarkanian, the biggest cheater in the history of NCAA sports. Sorry if there's any Tarkanian fans in here. He was the president at UNLV when Tark was the basketball coach. He had to fire Jerry Tarkanian. They both had to leave town. And so Bob Maxson ended up at Long Beach State. Bob Maxson knew a lot about college sports. And when he asked me to take the job, I said, I'll go down and sit there until you get your guy in there. And he was from the South. He goes, my guy? He says, I'm from UNLV. I don't have a guy. And so I said, well, I'll hold the football. Now, this job up here next door to yours, I still got this job, right? I get this job back. Yeah, but why don't you get down there, see if you're comfortable, see what you think. And then when they went through a national search, and he said, Bill, everybody wants you to be our athletic director. And he says, I'll never forget this, if you're loyal to me, I'll never get weak-kneed on you, never. And that was the gospel truth from him. He was a great president. As I like to say, he knew where I stood spiritually. He let me run my program according to my own conscience. And when the NCAA came in to do its certification program, which they did every 5 years, the woman that headed up the volunteer certification team, when he met with her next meeting was with me. And she came in and she said, your president says that you're the most honest man he's known in his life. I broke down. I wept. That was huge, that he would put that kind of trust in me to run our program. But he told me when he hired me, he says 30% of college presidents lose their jobs because of athletics. Is that right? Is that fair? No, but it's true. So he said, you run the program according to your conscience. I'll be your biggest fan. If you're loyal to me, I'll always have your back. And he did. And he also told me, he said, I know what happened at Fullerton. I did my homework. You stood tall. So anyway, that was what ended up to look like the worst decision of my career was a great blessing. Yeah. Roger.
The nonprofits, they have a difficult time, raising money. Everybody has a difficult time raising money. So they're all looking at for-profit segment of the thing. In your experience now seeing get paid for it, still getting paid, but having to raise money, what do you see as the steps of what's going on? Or do you ever look at this for Special Olympics? In terms of starting a for-profit within your nonprofit.
Yeah, you know who does that really well, like Goodwill with their stores. Oh my gosh, that's a nice little segment of a sort of a for-profit unit within a nonprofit. And I don't know how that stuff lines up tax-wise or whatever, but I've been over to visit Goodwill. They do a great, great job. I don't know if we have anything that we could sell enough or market enough, but I think those business principles all come into play. Yeah, Ben.
Walk us back a little bit through your confidence building. You had your staff, and you addressed that pretty succinctly. But obviously, for an organization to be an organization that sustains itself, you've got to generate a significant amount of income. Mm-hmm. Was when you came in and addressed what was in front of you and realized where the money was coming from, what was the thought process and steps that you took to reinstill the confidence of people to say, hey, Special Olympics is doing a great thing. I want to help them in whatever way I can. Well, run us through a little bit of the thought process.
Right. That's a good point. And first of all, in really looking at the return on investment on everything we did, was it smart? Did it make sense? Did it turn a profit? We all love to go to events, fundraising events that really touch our hearts, but at the end of the day, did they generate considerable revenue, and did you bring new people into the door that you can recruit to become part of your donor base? It all needs to be strategic, and we needed to really start over and look at everything we did, because we did some really good stuff and we did some stuff that wasn't very good at all. The other thing is that we are the largest revenue generator for Special Olympics around the world is law enforcement. Law enforcement last year raised $35 million for Special Olympics around the world. They raised $1 million for us. When I first took the job, my chairman and Rayford Johnson said, Bill, we just spent 4 hours with law enforcement. You got some real issues there. You need to get personally involved in that. And I'm thinking, we got Special Olympics, we got law enforcement, and we're raising $500,000 a year. What could be wrong with that picture? Basically, it was a lack of respect, a lack of communication. It was so easy to fix because, you know, our people learned how to service the volunteer, how to provide for the volunteer. That law enforcement, our law enforcement group is now one of the 5 top groups in the world. They raise $1 million a year. So, you know, it was that simple respect and trust and communication and evaluating things, knowing what the numbers are, being able to forecast properly and conservatively. We've always been really good spenders. Nonprofits are usually pretty good spenders. Right? Everybody's yeah, that's true. People are very careful in nonprofit in their spending. We don't overspend. You know, the crapshoot is always the revenue. You know, we were raising $6 million when I came in the door. Each of the last 2 years, we're bumping up on 11. So we're doing really well, but boy, you've got to watch those revenue streams like crazy because you want to make sure that your board has confidence in what you're doing. So it's, you know, it's been a process, and it hasn't been perfect all the way.
Thank you.
Yes.
When you first started with the Southern California Special Olympics and being one of 52 departments or segments of such a larger national and international organization, what was one freedom or value that the larger corporate enabled you to grow and bloom and blossom with, and what was one obstacle or boundary that you just really had to work to overcome?
Well, great question. I think the obstacle, the boundary, was a lack of trust. There was, in fact, I can remember my chairman of the board telling me, you know, the Shrivers, God bless them, we love them, they're great people, but they treat this thing like one big photo opportunity, and it's not run with business principles, it's not run with any consistency. I'm not saying there's anything illegal or unethical going on, it just wasn't run real professionally. It was like a family business. And to see how much that has improved and sophisticated and professionalized, and knowing that we're at a little bit of the forefront of all that. If we do this World Games thing right, we might be with the whole center of power and influence for this movement could shift, which is really exciting. I think what I learned the most probably was Eunice's brilliance and her brother, the late John F. Kennedy, used to say, "Keep Eunice away from me." She's always got an agenda. You know, Eunice was the one that pushed, you know, for better treatment for people with intellectual disabilities, and her vision of being able to see how it would promote inclusion and acceptance and diversity. And you know, we have a campaign now, spread the word to ban the word. What's the word? The R word, retarded. You don't use retarded. It's not hate speech. I hate that. That's so politically correct. Hate speech. It's not hate speech. It's pretty ignorant. It's pretty ignorant. Don't use the word retarded. It's offensive to our people. It's offensive to our athletes. They are the truly last underrepresented segment of our society, and they have so much to teach. You know, you know, like they said in the tape, we think we're helping them. Nah, they're helping us. They're helping us. I got to finish with this once because we have Coca-Cola here tonight, and Judy and Harold are longtime Coca-Cola people. Judy sent something out to our Bible study about, remember that, about pay for nonprofit people. Well, I stand up and I say, I think nonprofit people ought to be paid what they're worth. I think it's really, really important. So I read a couple of months back a Christian book, Radical. Anybody read Radical? I'm not sure if that's a Francis Chan book or not. Yeah. Okay. Well, they talk about that there's only X amount of languages and people groups that haven't been reached with the gospel. They haven't been reached with the gospel. So they're paddling, the missionaries are paddling their canoe up the river, and they get to that tribe, and they start a dialogue with them, and they say, who made the sun? We don't know. Who made the river? Not sure. Where do you go when you die? We've been waiting for somebody to come and tell us. Well, we're here. Can we sit down? Absolutely. Would you like something to drink? What'd they hand them? A Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola paid the money to get the guys there to get the job done, didn't they? But we can't with the gospel? Are we investing enough to get that done? Yeah, big message there. Big message. Congratulations to Coca-Cola. Any other questions or? Yes?
What advice would you give someone that wants to be an athletic director?
Don't. You know, do it because you love it. I mean, you know, I never coached. Some of my biggest critics would say, guy never coached, what's he doing being an athletic director? I would tell my coaches, that's your coach, Hank. Hank coaches men's and women's golf here at Biola. Aren't you glad, now see your athletic director is a coach. That can be bad because he might be second guessing you because he knows how to coach. I don't know how to coach, but all those things that we went through, remember the things that made the Dodgers one of the top 100 companies? I could say to a coach, I have no idea how you're running your offense or your defense, but I can look at the things that are important to me, and if you're not doing those well, and you're not winning, I draw the correlation there. So you have to have a passion for it. I think you have to have a passion for the young people. You want to be in it for all the right reasons because anybody read USA Today, lead stories about the disparity between the big schools. University of Texas, $157 million a year on its athletic program. Long Beach State spends 10 a year. Look at that disparity. And the Texas boosters, I know the athletic director was quoted as saying, the people that support us, you pretty much better win every game in everything. Well, that's not going to happen because that's why you lace them up. That's why you play, right? That's why you play the game. The underdog wins once in a while. So you really want to be in it for the right reasons. You have to have thick skin. You know, it'd wear you down. It'd wear me down a little bit from time to time. But and have a great president. If you have a great president, you have great support, which I did at one place, didn't at the other. Remember, I told the guy, guys like me shouldn't be working. Don't ever say that. Not smart. So you really want to be in it for the right reasons because intercollegiate athletics is a broken model. It's not here at Biola. They do it for all the right reasons at the smaller schools, and they've kept it to scale, and they've kept it balanced. Does that make sense? Yeah, but at the larger places, it's more advantageous to cheat. I hate to, and I wouldn't cheat. So it's not a system that's going to last. Yes?
Yeah, being in the business aspect in the nonprofit, what do you think is your next step? Do you think you remain in the nonprofit, or do you think?
Well, my wife said it's not digging in the garden with her. I know that. She said, you better have something to do. You better have something to do.
I'm going to tell Kim you said
the book, who's the guy that wrote Wild at Heart? John Eldridge. Okay, his next book was The Way of the Wild Heart, and he talks about the 6 stages of a man's life. Okay, stage number 5 is king. I've been in the king stage because I get to run my own shop almost 20 years now. Stage number 6, the last stage, is sage. I'm kind of enjoying the sage part. I don't know if you've ever heard of Bob Shank's The Master's Program. I'm halfway through Bob Shank's 3-year program. We have a lot of homework. We meet 4 times a year, and it's taking all your skills and your passions and applying them to make a difference in the kingdom. And so as I get an opportunity to speak, to teach, to coach, to mentor, I kind of see that's where I'd like to go. 2/3 of me, 2/3 of people in my position are going to retire in the next 5 years because we're all boomers. We're all going to go out. Who's going to coach the next level coming in? I would really like to be able to do that because there's so many godly principles that need to be communicated. So, yeah, thanks for asking. I'm kind of looking forward to that. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, let's thank you.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.